Hey, Composing Gloves here, and today we're going to be talking about the accent. So this is a very particular kind of thing that's going to introduce us to the concept of simple meter and compound meter, and why we have meters and all these other things. I'm going to sort of go through the basics of rhythm in more detail as we get through these next couple series. And one of those really important ideas is the idea of an accent. So right now we've been sort of a equal beat society. Every beat, all in our 4 beats of measure, are all equal. So there's beats 1, 2, 3, 4, and they're all the same loudness. They're all the same length. They're all everything. They're just great. And so if we were to put down 4 quarter notes, let me turn my volume down. Well, it probably doesn't matter too much. So we put down 4 quarter notes, and it's like, oh, okay. Now, how do you interpret this? Well, in 4/4, it actually would be interpreted with an accent on the first beat. That's the way we would naturally perceive 4/4. We're going to talk about this as a concept later and how time signatures relate to rhythm. And it's the principal reason why people's arguments that being able to manipulate time signatures doesn't really matter in FL is just plain wrong. But the way you go about it is different. So, but in rhythm music, this is just an obvious thing. So we have this, and we are able to, right now it would be counted as, if all our beats are equal, it would be counted as 1, 2, 3, 4. Nothing very interesting. Just 1, 2, 3, 4. However, if we wanted to make this like a more interesting rhythm without adding any other notes, we could just simply change the volume of individual notes. This is called an accent. Today, I'm only going to really emphasize the legato accent. So the legato accent is this guy. It's an arrow that points in the direction your music is going. So you'll see it called actually a forzando here. It's just a legato accent. And so they look like little carrot tops on top, and you can drag it and put it on. There are other methods to putting it on more effectively that I've yet to learn. So this is the method I've been using. I'm sure there are like hotkeys so that you can just select a group of notes and then just hit this hotkey and poof, it pops up. As that for staccato, I know that one. That's Shift S, I believe. But anyways, so what a accent does, that's what it looks like. And when you're writing them out, again, they go the direction, they point the direction your music's going. This gives one beat more volume. It's louder. It gets the emphasis. And things get kind of weird when you give this to a musician, because everyone sort of understands this as volume. But what people don't think about, especially as a music theorist, as a composer, is that this also, when a musician plays notes louder, there's more air going through their horn. Their timbre changes. Maybe if they're tired, if they've been playing for a while, their jaw may release some air out the side. And I know some players who actually will begin to sort of have a small hiss as it's going. So this has a number of implications outside of it. Right now, we're going to assume that's just 100% volume, but I don't want to just leave you out in the wild when this comes down. You need to be aware and be more conscious that when you put things down, a number of stylistic things happen, like a huge number, way more than any piece of music can possibly give you. In MIDI land, this is far more forgiving because it's going to be exactly the way you tell it to happen in MIDI. However, in rhythm music, all these other things will happen. An excellent player will have an excellent style. They will have things that when you put down notes like this, they will interpret it. And when they see an accent with a particular line of music, they'll have different ways of using that accent. So there's no universal way, but for us right now, it's just sort of like an increase in volume. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I have an accent on beats. I keep pointing at it with my hand. I have an accent on beats 1 and beats 3, or beat 1 and beat 3. So it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And so that's a very common rhythm right there. So we can put an accent. Now, if we have accents on everything, then it doesn't matter if we have accents, because our accents are on everything. So this is a typical, whenever you put down a meter, this is going to be your one beat. Beat 1 will be the strongest beat. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And that 1 is really loud. However, we could take it and we can move this over. Oh, well, this actually just changes the relative. That's relative to the performance of the MIDI data in the program, so don't worry about that. So we've got here, this would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we can move the accent around. This is very powerful tool, because we can do things like this now. So we could break this up into 2/8 notes. And okay, and we can break this one up. So here we have 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3. And now I'm adding accents naturally, but it would be like 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, and my 1 naturally is getting the emphasis. I actually have a hard time not doing that. But what we can do is we can add emphasis to notes that are usually don't get the emphasis. Like for example, beats 2 and beats 4 are not commonly given, well, in a 4/4 measure, they don't. And this is where you start getting into genres and styles and rhythm and why you would do things a certain way. And we haven't talked about time signatures and we haven't talked about time signatures in their relationship to rhythm and all that jazz, which again is coming up. But here we get 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1. Or my 1 got emphasized, but 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1. If I play it. If I play this, so as you can hear, it does that. I wonder if Control D. Nope. I wanted to see the duplicate. I got to go through and just read through the hotkeys on this. But versus if we got rid of these accents and copied this and pasted it, very, very different. Now, what naturally happens, though, is again, that first beat gets the emphasis. Now, what we could do instead is we could put a beat on beat 3. So, like, a lot of songs will have a shaker or a clap that, you know, is going like, or people will clap on beat 3, like, or that's beats 2 and 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and stuff like that. So we'll create this rhythm, this series of accents, and they'll happen differently. When you combine them with different instruments, tones, timbres, all these things, you get a really, you know, unique build, especially when you consider that accents, as I talked about earlier, just have any number of interpretations. This is stuff that you just don't find in books. I've read so many theory books and gone through the beginning so many different times. It's just this weird thing. And one thing that I've noticed is they never tell you that. They never tell you all these things. There are things that you find out when you've actually worked with musicians or you are a musician. But even if you are a musician, this stuff doesn't like occur to you until you're recording, and then you realize that what you write down on the page and your artistic vision and what they are going to make are two different things. And you got to figure out how to bridge that gap. So when you put down stuff like this, especially sometimes you get people who interpret these symbols with symbols that you would use for other things. Like sometimes you run into people who seem to play more of a marcato for a legato accent. You don't know what any of that means right now, but I've met people who their version of how they would interpret it is, I was like, oh man, that's not what I was thinking of. And then you kind of have to somehow communicate. And normally they pick it up really fast if they're good. So anyways, here we have a rhythm. This would be 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3, 4, and so we'll get that. So play this. So that's what we get with that one. So now I really quick want to just clarify something here. Now we have a couple other symbols. We're not going to deal with them, but I want to say this is a legato accent. We talked about this at the very beginning, just a smidge. So it's a legato accent. What that means is there are different ways to interpret notes on those in-between values. Because we talked about a tempo, it gives us a really rigid way to interpret beats. Like one beat is a very specific length according to our tempo. And if we want to change that, we could do a number of things. We could change the tempo. We could change what note is there. We could add a dot, which extends our note length a little bit. We could do all these different things, but there are still note lengths that we just can't get to. And what you can do, because maybe they're important to your style, like in a march, it's very important that it's played as an 8-note rhythm, but the 8th notes are shorter, but they're not necessarily 16th notes. If you're not following me, don't worry about it. All you need to understand is that we have these rhythms we can't get to by very, very strict interpretation of our score. So what do? We'll use symbols. And one of those symbols to alter this, and it's based on, there are ways the computer will interpret it its own way, but when you play with a live band, it's just a whole nother universe. Like that's why live is so cool. They can interpret your music. But this accent, what it says is play the full beat, but give an emphasis to the front of this beat. And there's different places, like during that time that is a beat, you could, get louder or softer. You should emphasize the middle of the beat or the attack of the beat, or you could even, it's a more complicated technique, but you could hit it soft, and then bring it up loud within one beat and then move on. Like you do that in an eighth note. Like we have this times. And of course, the shorter they get, the less practical these examples become. But it's interesting to note that, you know, for a whole note, 4 whole beats, you can start soft, and then you should get loud in the middle and get soft again, or you could start loud. You know, you could do all these different things. So why should that go away when you get to these notes? Well, it doesn't. However, these symbols, and there's more than these, trust me. These symbols allow us to achieve that with shorter value notes, and they're given on a more intuitive principle. So that's why they exist. And so we have an accent, a legato accent. My eyes just got really cold. I don't even know what that was about. And so when you put that down, you get dude. Like it gets louder at the beginning of your note and sort of dies a little bit at the very end, just a touch, but it's still perceived as an overall louder note. And then the rest of the notes continue on underneath their proper styling. In this case, sort of like a very similar style. I play clarinet and flute, and those were the ones I learned really well. Piano, but I'm going to compare this to the clarinet. So in the clarinet, when you're playing it, you have to blow, you create this tunnel of air, just like you would in any wind instrument. And you have your tongue, and your tongue is going to be responsible for the way these notes are performed. Because every time something like this happens on the same note, your fingers stay where they are. And so your tongue has to go two, like your tongue has to hit your teeth and create these columns of air that come out. And the way you do that will determine how the note sounds. And there are guys, I forgot his name, but I used to be told about this guy all the time. He would teach, and you would essentially play one note for like a whole hour while you were with him, and he would just make you critically aware of your mouth and how it moves in the column of air and how it vibrates the reed on your clarinet and all these things. So this accent here would be determined by the way I introduce my column of air and the way my tongue moves. It's called tonguing. The way my tongue moves to create that note. And so I'm just trying to give you a really conscious thing, especially if you've never played an instrument or you're an electronic producer and for whatever reason you're learning written music, which I am so for, like do that. So that's the thing. So that's what the accent's for. Any of you guys who have played music, maybe you're just a little bit more aware now of sort of all the things you've probably become more aware of things that you probably didn't even realize you were doing. This is where practice can become powerful. When you're conscious of these things, you can work on those things in particular. But anyways, that's the accent. It allows us to create emphasis and beats and turn otherwise stagnant beats, things that have no sort of feel or vibe, and put them there. And whenever you play a beat and you have that vibe, you are definitely doing this. And it becomes more complicated later on as we get into more different meter types, sharing rhythms, tuplets. As we start introducing all these things, we get a very rich combination of options. Right now, we're talking about single rhythms. We're not even talking about polyrhythms. So I'm not even going to touch polyrhythms, though, probably for quite a while. I'll probably go into tones before I go into polyrhythms, which is just like more than one rhythmic line going at a time. Some people refer to it as a type of meter, though, because it's another thing. So anyways, if you have any questions, let me know. Subscribe and have a blessed day. Eternal outcomes, we will outlast, we will keep our